Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network. This is the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe. According to Big C and the good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America and across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France, and of course you good old boys up in Canada. You know we love you up in Canada, but there's still no one I love more than you good old boys down south in the land of the free, in the home of the brave. Today is a beautiful August the 31st, 2017. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Everything is hot and humid and humid down here right now. You know, we're getting ready for college football kicking off.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be as hot as the humidity that we got going in here.
Yeah, well, we know. We love you good old boys and your humidity down south. I still want to say our thoughts and prayers are with everyone in the South, the great state of Texas, especially in the Houston area, and also over in Louisiana. I know the storm is going up to the northeast, Big C. I believe it's going up over Tennessee and straight up north into the northeast. So hopefully everybody is prepared and taking extra caution and listening to all the warnings when the law enforcement says evacuate the area. Nothing's more important than staying healthy, Big C. Can you expound on that, please?
We got some of that rain last night and this morning from the storm coming eastward and everything. And we didn't get the deluge that got there in Texas and Louisiana.
Yeah.
And like you said, our thoughts and prayers go out to those people in those states with all that travesty and devastation going. Hopefully, you know, with the Red Cross and many volunteers and Americans outpouring sympathetic and you know, resources to that area. Hopefully everything will be much better for those people in weeks and months to come.
Well, definitely, Big C. I do want to say today's segment sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. And, of course, Big C, I know that so many people, one of the things being down here in Southern California, heading back up north, you know, for Friday, and we'll hit on some college football tomorrow. Actually, we have some college football starting off tonight also. And just looking around the campus of UCLA and then over at USC and looking over at Dodger Stadium, Chavez Ravine. Also, just looking at the site where they're going to be putting in the new Los Angeles Stadium for the Rams over there by, you know, in Inglewood across from the Forum. And just a lot of good things happening. Even touring down in San Diego, seeing the beautiful ballpark, Petco Park, where the San Diego Padres play. And I wonder one thing, Big C, with the Chargers going up north to LA again, playing at StubHub Center, you still have San Diego State playing their football here in San Diego. Why is it good enough for a college team, but not good enough for an NFL team, Big C? Your thoughts? Yeah. And I know you're caught up in the weather, Big C, having a little bit of issue with the microphone, but we'll work on that as well as we can with Mother Nature. So obviously, but go right ahead, make that point again. You said ego costs a lot of people sometimes. When the right thing to do was say, you know what, we made a mistake. Let's go back to San Diego, and when the stadium's built, and then we'll relocate, and that maybe might make some of the fans better. Big C, your thoughts? Yeah. And again, obviously, we're having some issues with Big C's microphone. We are going to work on that a little bit as we're getting Big C's caught up in that inclement weather. And also, it goes to show that when you look at doing a podcast, a live sports show, we're just like anybody else. We have to deal with the weather. We have to deal with those issues. We have to make sure that everybody's safe. We got to make sure that, obviously, we do our show from 3,000 miles apart. He's on the East Coast, and I'm on the West Coast. So there are times when we're affected by the same thing that's affecting anyone down in the great state of Texas or even in the South. So obviously, when it comes to doing our podcast, our sports show, we want to make sure that we keep things real. We're not operating in studios. We go out and get among the people. That's always the most important thing when we're bringing you real sports. And as we do that, we want to make sure that we keep everything original. I know also tonight we have, speaking of the teams that are going and playing football all across the country. We're going to work on Big C's line, getting Big C back on the phone. Speaking of teams that are playing all over the country, just like Big C's, he's out there, in the South, helping out with people who are going through issues also, doing the best he can. And a lot of people, along with the Red Cross, but we do our show live on remote. We don't sit in the studio, isolated from people, telling people how bad it is outside. Sometimes Big C calls in from a boat, or we go out and travel to different events, like me being in Southern California, and he's out on the East Coast, but he's dealing with the same type of inclement weather that we see on the news. Big C, I think we have your microphone back hooked up. Are you there, Big C? Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
We were talking about the situation with the stadiums.
Yeah.
And, when you're looking at Spanos family down in San Diego, and they were looking at the new stadiums that are being built around the NFL, everyone's seeing what the Falcons have done this year.
Yeah.
As far as over their new facility, we saw what happened in Dallas a few years ago, the University of Phoenix Stadium. The Chargers Stadium has been around since the late 60s, since they came into the NFL.
Yeah.
They started off in Los Angeles originally.
Yeah.
Everybody now is in that hunger move for luxury boxes, Charlton.
Yeah.
Owners, they're not making enough money with the hundreds of millions of dollars that they're making right now per year. So they want to have the personal seat license and they want to have the luxury boxes. Everybody wants to have a couple hundred luxury boxes in the stadium because all of that money goes to them. It doesn't go to the revenue sharing around the league.
Yeah.
So it's about personal greed right now, Charlton. And you got to think about all these fans that have supported you for decades. They mean nothing to you.
No.
In the bottom line, those fans who meant nothing with all the hardship they've done. This is the second time that the way to leave them.
Yeah.
They have still time to sit in. Even when they lose, they can't.
Yep.
You look at the Cleveland Browns when they left Cleveland originally and went to Baltimore.
Yeah.
Those fans were there. They never had anything to cheer for. They still don't have anything to cheer for.
Yeah. That's a very good point, Big C. Another thing, too, and I love California, but there's so much politics. The sad thing about the sports business in California, when you have in the big media markets, this is not like we're in the middle of the country where there's not a lot of people. San Diego has several million people. The Bay Area has over 7 million people, and they're losing a football team to a smaller region of the country in Las Vegas. San Diego obviously is going up to a much bigger market, the number 2 market in the country in Los Angeles. But think about Atlanta. When Atlanta was building their new stadium, they did not leave the Georgia Dome to go play at Georgia Tech, which is a much smaller stadium. They didn't do that to their fan base. They stayed in Georgia Dome until the new Mercedes-Benz Dome is open. When you look up at Seattle, even when Seattle almost lost the Seahawks because they didn't want to build them a stadium, that only passed by a 51-49 vote. And now we look at how dominant that fan is. The fan base is the 12th man up in Seattle. But when they left the Kingdome, they didn't go and play at Washington State. They went and played, and they built the new stadium first, and they kept the team local for their fan base. San Diego, which has a great history of football and one of the most beautiful parts of the country, Big C, they decided to go to L.A. in a smaller part. Carson's not anything that doesn't have much to do with Los Angeles. Doesn't have the same vibe. It's almost like if you made a mistake with your girlfriend, don't you go back and apologize as opposed to just leaving and sleeping in the car for a couple of weeks? Big C, your thoughts?
You would think that they would do that. I mean, you're robbing these fans.
Yeah.
You're going to have 75,000 every week in San Diego without a football team.
Yeah.
You're not going to make that trek down the freeway, Charlton, to go to Los Angeles to watch a game, and I definitely would.
No.
After you've abandoned me with all that I've invested in
Yeah.
you over the past years.
Yeah. So obviously, Big C, when it comes to that, and I think about the Spanos family, there's something that happened with the Spanos Senior and Junior, and also the Oakland with Al Davis and Mark Davis. I know that Al took the team out of Oakland, but he still kept them in California, and a lot of Raider fans were there always anyway. But going to Las Vegas is just turning your back on the whole Bay Area. But you have 2 young men, the sons of this father, the patriarchs of these families that own these teams. The sons have all this wealth, this nouveau riche money now, and they're deciding to do things differently than their fathers. I know all the time there's always threats of leaving to get what you want. But the fact that they're actually doing it, and for the Chargers, they're not going to a better location. It's not like the Rams leaving St. Louis and coming out to Los Angeles. I mean, they have the Coliseum's a nice enough place to have football until the new stadium's ready. In fact, they played football there in the past. But the thing that the Chargers are doing is slapping the fans in the face and then thinking the new fans in Carson are going to be so enthralled that they're going to come fill up 27,000 seats. Big C, I think you got 27,000 people at your barbecues, Big C. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah.
Playing in the NFL.
Yeah.
Okay? And between them, they didn't win 10 games.
No.
And so how do you draw, fans to your facility that between two NFL organizations, you can't win 10 games yet? You got USC winning 11 games.
Yeah.
And so which team are they going to want to go see? The team
Yeah.
that's going to perform or the team that's going to play clown?
Yeah.
And so you can't bring losing organizations into brand new beings and say, hey, you got to pay premium price.
Yeah.
You couldn't win in San Diego. What makes you going to win in L.A. and you haven't even upgraded your program just like you haven't upgraded your facility, Charles?
Yeah, and speaking of upgrading, Big C, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. The sports world lost the great Raleigh Massimino, one of the better coaches in the history of college football. And he had a statement that he did not...
Basketball.
Yeah, I'm sorry, college basketball, Big C. And he had a statement that one of the NBA owners that used to own the Clippers didn't, have the issue where he didn't want black people showing up at his games unless they played for his team and he was on tape, and obviously a lot of that garbage going on. But Massimino did not appreciate that and let him know that. Now I want to speak up because we're very real. We don't care what color you are. But for the white men like a Dean Smith, the late Dean Smith, and Massimino, they just didn't put up with any BS. They were straight shooters, no matter what color you are, no matter what your gender, your religion. They didn't care about that. They showed people respect. And that's something I want to give homage to all white Americans who do that, especially in the political climate that we have now. A lot of people are afraid to say that right is right and wrong is wrong. But for men that did not have to stand up for young black players, he was always fair to players, Big C. Just talk about what that means to the white society that sits back sometimes and they don't say anything because they benefit from racism and all that garbage. Big C, your thoughts?
When you think about Raleigh Massimino, he was part of that original Big East Conference, Charles, and won a national championship at Villanova. He later went on to coach at UNLV after Jerry Tarkanian left. And so he had a lot of those same ideas of a Coach Tarkanian where you give young men an opportunity.
Yep.
And you think about a lot of the players that they gave an opportunity to go to college at this Big East University. They went on to become proud citizens in America, very productive members in the professional and private world.
Yeah.
And this is what coaches, when they give people opportunities. And so many young African-American men, Charlton, in our society have gotten opportunities from coaches.
Yeah.
They come from downtrodden backgrounds and situations. Give them an opportunity to go to a prestigious university, Charlton.
Yeah.
Get an education and go out and be productive. All people need in life, Charlton, is an opportunity. We also lost, another great coach from Michigan State, Charlton.
Yeah.
When you think about that, this is the man who brought along Judd Heathcote.
Yep. Magic Johnson.
He's a product of him. When you think about Magic Johnson, you think about Judd. Judd, brought Magic in as a freshman. They played against Indiana State and Larry Bird, for the national championship. Magic, helped Michigan State win its
Yeah.
first national championship
Yeah.
in basketball. But Judd was such a trailblazer because he was one of those coaches who took a lot of those Midwestern kids, Charlton,
Yep.
and brought them into Michigan State and developed them.
Yeah.
Not just as athletes, but as people, Charlton.
Yeah.
And you think about how great Magic Johnson has been in life. And only spending 1 year with Jed. People say, well, it's a product of the Lakers. No, it's a product of the start that he got.
Yeah.
In Michigan State under Jed.
Yeah.
And Magic will always pay praise and homage to this man because if you look at any time you see a Michigan State basketball game, Charlton, on television, you can always see Magic Johnson wearing the Michigan State
Yeah.
shirt.
Yeah.
That's because he was so proud to be a part of that program. And Coach Heathcote brought that into him. It resonated from what he taught Magic, and Magic has always been giving back from what was given to him, Charlton.
You know when you say that, and I ask this because being down in Los Angeles, going by the campus of USC, and I got my start in the broadcast with the late Tom Kelly, who was a broadcaster at USC for 41 years, and all he did was said, what do you want to do? You do a good job. What do you want to do? I was spotting the game for him, and he put in a call for me. And all I'm saying, Big C, is for a lot of the people in our society, especially the Caucasian men, whether they're broadcast or in business, I just want them to realize it's okay to be brave, like Dr. King. It's okay to be brave, and people may laugh at me when I say this, but even Louis Farrakhan with the Million Man March, he was talking about atonement for whatever we've done wrong and how people can help each other. Now, all over the country, you have people pulling together because we have this tragic situation going on in Texas. And even the President of the United States, the first time he showed up, it was almost like a campaign rally. It was embarrassing, talking about how large the crowd is, where people were homeless. What do you expect? And then yesterday he was starting to say he wants to offer his condolences for the families, which is what he should have done on day one. Get out of campaign mode and just be a decent human being. But for all the white men who are afraid to stand up for people, you've already had some iconic men who've done that, Big C. They've done it not just in the world of athletics, but in the business world too. And I think that's so important, that whether it's the deal for Black Lives Matters or no tolerance for beating up women, we need more of our white brethren to stand up and say what's right, like these great icons that we talked about. Big C, your thoughts? Yeah.
Said that he can no longer tolerate the intolerance that was being done through the manipulation of college athletes, how
Yeah.
they were being taken advantage of,
Yeah.
and receiving nothing in return. And he felt that he was being a part of that by sitting here watching his network making millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars
Yep.
on the slave labor of these athletes. And when these athletes are being just tossed away like the trash when you throw it out every week or two.
Yeah. Well, Big C, I tell you, even tonight, with college football kicking off around the country, we've already had a couple of games. Stanford looks very strong against Rice in a beatdown in Australia, and we saw Colorado State get the win over Oregon State. But tonight, you have Minnesota. They're at home, and they're playing a game against Buffalo, and so that should be a big win for Minnesota. A couple of games on slate, too. Arizona State, they're playing at home in the desert of all places. It must be like 110 down there in Tempe. They're playing New Mexico State. Also, a couple of other games around the country. The big game that they call is Ohio State on the road at Indiana. That's a game a lot of people are looking forward to. That's on ESPN. Connecticut's playing Holy Cross. So a lot of games happening around the country. San Jose State already lost their game, their home opener to South Florida with Charlie Strong. But even tonight, Big C, with the Big Ten opener, and they're talking about Ohio State and can they get the conference championship, because last year was won by Penn State. Well, they're not talking about anything to do with anything social. It's as if they said, okay, we had our stance, let's sweep it under the rug, let's get back to football. I think the bad thing that happens with that, Big C, is we got to make sure, just like we said, no tolerance for hitting women. I would love to see the major networks open up with that same statement, because it still goes on even though we want to see the touchdown. Big C, your thoughts?
When you think about no tolerance, for violence against women, what it is, WQL that go to college at y'all.
Big Ten.
What does Urban Meyer have a history of with his players that have been in this program?
Yeah.
So, this is the forefront. I mean, we've had a lot of these problems that have occurred in Ohio State. I mean, Jim Tressel lost his job for improprieties in Ohio State, not just financial, but other things that were going on also.
Yeah.
After winning a national championship.
Yeah.
So, these major universities that have let things go for a long time because of the productivity of the coaches and the program.
Yeah.
Bringing finances into the university. I mean, we just saw Hugh Freeze in Mississippi lose his job.
Yeah.
But as long as he was on top of the heat, but once he lost that big class of players and they felt that maybe it down in, they said, okay, it's easy to get rid of him now.
Yeah.
But, this manipulation of players is allowing of violence. We saw that at Baylor with Art Brown.
Yep.
I mean, they had such a list. They had more complaints against him than they had police.
Yeah.
Police department.
Yeah.
So they couldn't even keep up.
That's true.
The Ncaa and these universities are aware, Chauncey. There's no blind eye. We talked about the swimmer from Stanford.
Yeah.
Raping the girl out there and disappearing into obscurity after only being sentenced to 3 months.
Yeah.
For that heinous crime that he should have gotten 20 years for. Think about the New York Five who didn't rape anybody.
Yep.
And they all got, up to 25 years in prison. They all spent 12 or 16.
Yep.
And they had no evidence on these kids, and nor did they ever produce him. But the kid at Stanford that they caught cold-handed with his pants down,
Yeah.
3 months in jail because he's a white privileged kid.
Yeah.
Society, and this is what Colin Kaepernick was talking about. Let's have some equal justice.
Yeah.
He
Yep.
As far as how they're treating the players go.
And you know, also, Donald Trump did not take out an ad in the New York Times saying send this guy to prison, and they knew he was guilty, Big C. What about our twist of fate right there? I do want to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And for every sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with pro athletes, your college athletes, your high school players, even your mom and pop soccer leagues. And when you reach out to them, let them know that Big C sent you. So Big C, also, when we talk about the build-up, this build-up for the football season, and we all love football, there's no greater state for football than Texas, at least for the appeal of it. Texas has stadiums that cost, $40, $50 million. Some stadiums hold 20,000 on the campus. There's some great programs down there, where there's South Lake Carroll, or where there's Odessa Permian High School, there's Midland Lee. A lot of these great programs. There's Aldine, Texas. There's another one called Trinity, Euless, Texas, out of Trinity High School, out of Euless, Texas. There's so many great programs down there. And I know in the Houston area, there's still a lot of people, they couldn't care less about high school football right now, even though that state probably loves it as much as any state. So I hope that people are still continuing to give as we're talking about kicking off football in other parts of the country. There's still a lot of pain going on down in the South and even over in Louisiana. And I just want to make sure that people know that Big C Sports, we're praying for you, and we're hoping that people continue to donate. And we want to just thank all of the pro athletes and the businesses, Big C, all over the country that are giving their time and their efforts and their money to the South, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
I look at the other broadcast networks and says, let's get over it. And then this thing
Yeah.
about what's going on down in Texas and Louisiana. Let's get on with the world of sports.
Yeah.
The world of sports is secondary to life, not even secondary, Charles.
Yeah.
Because life resonates and makes sports. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you have so many Americans hurting, we talk about Americans. And I think I keep thinking about Kaepernick, when he was talking about for equality.
Yeah.
And yet we have these sports stations, Charlton, talking about games. They're not talking about equality. They're not talking about helping the people in Houston. They're talking about where it's high and dry. Let's get on with the games there.
Yeah.
They should be sitting there talking about games are not important. Just like I really respect Bob McNair, the owner of the Houston Texans, for canceling his game.
Oh, yeah. Very classy.
Letting his players go back and deal with family.
Yeah.
That's the best move that he could have ever done. Jerry Jones wanted to play the game, though.
Yeah.
He wanted the game grab to do.
Yeah. I mean,
This is what we look at. You talk about the high schools, Charles. Think about how many high schools are underwater in Texas.
Yeah.
Those kids are not thinking about playing a game. They're thinking about where they're going to be sleeping.
yeah.
That's what they're thinking. What are they going to wear? What are they going to eat?
Yeah.
They're not worried about a game, Charles. The game is just a game. It's like it says a game.
Yep.
It's not right. We got to put this works what importance is.
Yeah.
I think it's great to have college football kicking off this week. They said it's going to take people's minds off of things. If it takes your mind off the devastation that's going on in Texas and Louisiana, you're not a human being.
Yep.
That should be on the forefront of every American's mind. It's like even the president, in all of what he's doing, he should stop. Because he keeps saying, and he ran on this campaign,
Yeah.
America first, okay? But he's dealing with other issues that's not America first.
Yeah.
He should be putting all thoughts and efforts that all the people that he can, in the state of Texas and Louisiana for relief. This hurricane, made Katrina down in New Orleans look like a toy.
Yeah.
It's devastation, and that was the most devastating thing that had ever happened in American history, from a natural disaster. Now what we have in Texas is the greatest natural disaster we ever had.
Yeah.
The ironic part is that we've had two Republican presidents, Charlton, in that 12-year span where these two tragedies have happened.
Yeah.
And neither one of them seem to have a clue about the sensitivity of the local people that this happened to.
Sometimes they don't go down in that region of the world, especially when they don't after their vote's over. And we hope that everybody continues to pull together, and we'll certainly do our part. Big C, I do want to say, as we enter back into the world of college football, I know we talk so much about certain programs, but if there's ever a trap game, there's a trap game. It's the way you know how you take some people for granted, or you're out there looking for that boar, and you think that one arrow might take them down, but you really need 5 arrows, Big C, but you only got 4 with you. It's like Richard Pryor told his friend, they were out looking for bears one time, and he told his friends, give me the rifle. He said, what rifle? He said, the one I gave you back at the car. He said, it was not my rifle. Why do I need a rifle? He said, because there's a bear behind you. And his friend said, well, which way you going to run? Remember that joke, Big C? Obviously, when North Dakota goes into Utah tonight, that's not a game you would expect Utah to lose. But that same North Dakota program beat Iowa last year that also knocked off Michigan. Is that a trap game up in Utah for a small program like North Dakota coming up playing a Pac-10 program? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, North Dakota has been a powerhouse in division in football.
Yeah.
For the past decade.
Yeah.
They have run shot through that division.
Yeah.
You spoke about what they did to Iowa on that last second field.
Yeah.
They beat them last year in the game. Utah, one of the advantages Utah has is its altitude challenge.
Yeah.
But Utah cannot take North Dakota State for granted because if they understand the history, Carson Wentz, the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles,
Yeah.
is from North Dakota State.
Yeah.
So they have some athletes that have played there. Utah has produced a plethora of athletes.
Yeah.
But you don't take any game lightly, especially an opening game. Because you go back a couple years ago with the University of Buffalo, and Ohio State in the horseshoe.
Yeah.
They gave the Buckeyes all they could handle. Made Khalil Mack the number 2 draft pick overall in the NFL after that performance.
Yeah.
So anybody can go in, Chauncey. So I don't think Utah is going to take this game lightly. They have some veteran players returning on offense, even at the pivot position.
Yeah.
So this is a game that they're not going to sit there and say a trap game. They need to go out and establish themselves because they have a tough schedule in the Pac-12 conference.
That's a very good point, Big C. Something else I want to bring up, too, just looking at the Pac-12, and then I want to get your thoughts on what you're looking forward to. We know we're going to do college football tomorrow, but I know everyone's looking forward to Alabama and Florida State. But another game up here on the West Coast that has probably a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback that doesn't get the same attention at Washington State. They were 8-5 last year under Coach Leach, and that's a team that can really throw the football up in Palouse. And they're playing Montana State, and that's on September the 2nd. But look at their schedule. They play Montana State at home, and then they get Boise State, which would be a tough game. Oregon State got blown out by Colorado State, and then they have Nevada before they play USC. At Washington State, this is a team that can start the season and probably 4-0 before they play the Trojans. Talk about we might see 500 yards put up against Montana State with Washington State throwing the ball so well. Big C, your thoughts?
The quarterback that no one talks about, Joe. He's a leading passer in the back. Everybody gives Donald all the credit out of USC.
Yeah.
The best quarterback in the conference is Rosen, even though the MVP of the conference was last year at Washington with the quarterback there. But Big Folk, this kid threw for 5,000 yards last year at Johnson for the Wazoos.
Yeah.
He can sling it all over the field. He stands 6'5", 6'6". He's a prototypical, as they say, NFL pocket passer.
Yeah.
And he works in that Mike Leach gun offense.
Yeah.
But he can find receivers all over the field. He's unfathom in the pocket. He has no fear. And you talk about it, he can average 500 yards a game passing in that first 48.
Well, Big C.
When they get to Pac-12, he's going to be able to hold his skills and can be ready to outgun any defense in the Pac-12, Joe.
Well, I tell you, Big C, and you're going to hear it first on Big C Sports, he will lead the Pac-12 in passing. Okay, we know Donald at USC is a good player. We know Rosen at UCLA is a good player. And we know that Browning at Washington is a very good player. But Washington State will lead the Pac-12 in passing this year. You'll hear it on Big C Sports before you hear it on any other program. Halfway through the season, other people will start paying attention to this kid. And I think we'll be poetic again, Big C, when we talk about that. But I want to get your thoughts before I get your last point. SEC football, we know we have the big game, Alabama and Florida State. We'll preview that tomorrow. But just give me your thought on SEC football, even against the ACC. The ACC won more games than the SEC last year. I know you're big for down southern in the South for football. Just give me your feel for SEC football this year, top to bottom. Is it Alabama and everybody else, or will they be pushed by schools like Florida, Georgia, and LSU? Big C, your thoughts?
It's always Alabama and everybody else. I mean, you look at Florida, Johnson, they suspend 10 players from the game.
Yeah.
You know, McElwain has set the team up for losing. That's what he's doing. You know, Georgia has a young quarterback that's a sophomore, but that team goes as Nick Chubb goes, Johnson.
Yeah.
Chubb has to have a healthy senior year.
Yeah.
He needs to gain at least 1,600 yards on the ground for Georgia to be challenging of anybody, Johnson.
Yeah.
Everything starts with Alabama. You know how this race went on in
Yep.
over again.
Yep.
But this is Alabama's always conference to lose. LSU, you got Ogeron. He's trying to establish his moxie down at LSU.
Yeah.
So, everything has changed. Kevin Summers on the hot seat is taking him.
Yep.
So this is a conference that belongs to Alabama. Everybody else is looking for second and third seed in the conference, Charles.
Well, Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Bondini Brown. He was Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He used to always say, rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, I'm seeing you here, Charles. I'm seeing that I just can get on another hot streak. They lost 3 consecutive games at one point. They turned things around.
Yeah.
Judge get his back with the New York Yankees. They benched him. Joe Girardi did the other night. So, when will he bring him back into that lineup? And will he adjust his position in the lineup? Will he drop him down to around number 7 or 8 and get him out of that 4 slot so that he won't have so much pressure on him, Johnson? But as you say, college football is kicking off tonight. We can lean back.
Well, that's funny. Down here in Southern California, they don't even know what moonshine is, Big C. They thought, with the moon shines at night. I said, no, them good old boys down south, they know what moonshine is. They had people out looking up at the moon, seeing if it's shining, and said, no, that's a southern thing, Big C. Maybe you good old boys got to ship some of that out to Southern California. I will say something about California, though. They all wish they could be California girls or be around California girls. Big C, we love it. On the Big C Sports Network. I always want to say every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. Good old boys down south. We always want to tell you, there's never, ever any excuse for domestic violence. No woman should ever have to go through that garbage. If you know any woman going through domestic violence, just call 911 so she won't have to deal with it on her own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports program, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.